Okay, so let's take a moment just to kind of settle our minds and bring ourselves to this moment, not what we were doing a minute ago, not what we're going to do later. Just check in with your body. But most importantly, invite your mind to join your body here. And just try to sit quietly without following your thoughts. Thoughts will arise, no problem. But don't follow it with a story. Don't continue the conversation. If you get caught up in a conversation, just try to bring your mind gently back to the sensation of the breath going in and out of your body. And try to generate a positive intention to use your time well this evening. So think about the reason you decided to show up. And based on that, try to generate a strong intention to use this time well. And combine it with the wish that it not just benefit yourself, that it's going to ripple out to benefit those around you. And we'll recite the 7-limb prayer. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. Dedicate our own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. Refuge in bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Hi, Esther. I always feel like I have to raise my voice, like that's going to make a difference just because their video's not on. That's okay. Anybody got questions from the book? Yes, go, Debbie. Go for it.
Yeah, I don't know if I should read the section or just, it's a section about how, you could be sweeping and doing a mundane activity, but by using a mantra, you could transmute and elevate it and stop your, I mean, I know where it is in the book, but it's supposed to, I just was wondering how, if you chant it aloud or if you mentally or.
It doesn't matter, actually. So the main thing is that, I mean, this is why you can turn everything into a Dharma practice, it's just, and it's really helpful if you also have a tendency to have these conversations in your mind that are perfectly useless, like worrying about something you can't do anything about, do whatever. So it's a good way to interrupt that kind of habit, and you do something else that can be beneficial. So, because the sound of mantra is supposed to have its own, power, but mostly it's our mind. It's being able to generate, getting in the habit of keeping your mind on what you're doing, first of all, instead of all over the place, which is exhausting, when our mind's flitting about around the world and just, and then meanwhile we're trying to do some work here, so it's really good to help us stay on task. And then when you're saying mantra, so you can, if you find a mantra you like, I mean, there are tons of recordings, but it's like you can say it out loud, you can say it in your head, you can keep count, you don't have to keep count, there are no rules about that, but it is helpful at the beginning to use one of our bookends of setting a motivation, because you want to always do things with the intention of benefiting others. May this bring me to enlightenment quickly so I can be a benefit to others. So you just want to be, or it could be, I'm reciting these mantras to keep my mind in a better place than all this rumination about whatever, so but it's because it's all about mind training. So, yeah. I always think you have a question.
It also seemed to say, like, I just want to read the sentence, like,
Yeah.
that the external energy will not be able to, it won't hold your mind and arouse desire, attraction, and other negativities. Rather, your mind can control and transmute this environment into something transcendent. Like it.
Right. I mean, it's the idea is that if you're truly, focusing on saying the mantra, doing the task, you're doing, and all that stuff, it means that you can, it's like one of the practices is to imagine that every person we see, everything that's there in a Pure Land kind of aspect, because the potential of everything to be that is there. Every person you meet has the potential to be a Buddha. So, so you're imagining them in their, in the future result of the state. But the idea is because it's about mind training. It's not about pretend. It's just about, we tend to come at things from an angle that assumes sort of either the worst, just, and we want to get the habit of seeing the possibility, and we don't need to have a lot of stuff happening for the possibility. What we have to do is tame our mind. So once we have our mind tamed, everything's possible. So it's just a way of, and of course the power of mantra, the idea of that is that sound, has an energy in all the little insects or animals that are around, they'll hear it. It can help pacify them, all that stuff. But it's, I can't chant it out loud and have that happen, since I can't carry a tune. But anyway, so, but so it's this attitude of joy, like you want to benefit others. So so you're, whatever chore you're doing, you want to do it well, you want to, do it, whatever, but the long-term goal is that you want to use it as an opportunity to work on your mind, because that is the key to helping others and yourself, obviously. Does that make sense? So Lama Zopa Rinpoche has that book called either Bodhisattva Attitude or, it's, look it up on Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. But he has it's all about that, what kind of mind you could bring to this activity or that activity, or, and it's just and the Buddha did that. The Buddha, taught these little verses for people to think about when they're doing tasks, so that they're always correcting their attitude, so it's like, and it's that mindfulness thing, just of being able to, like I've talked about before, where if you, say you get in your car, and before you start driving, you remember that, okay, now I'm driving a car. These are dangerous weapons. Maybe it's wise if I pay attention while I'm driving. Also, I'm doing it for the purpose of going, so you're sort of setting your motivation, and it's particularly important as we come to and from work, or in our families and our friends, that it's the opportunity for us to set aside what we were doing and get our minds ready for what we're about to do now. And with things like driving, it's about driving attentively, instead of just cursing everybody for getting in the way. So, and the more we can understand that, the more that we get control over our mind and train it out of anger habits or craving habits, or the less harm we do to others, and certainly the less harm we do to ourselves. So it's so you have to see the logic of that, that it really is, because the path is really not difficult. What's difficult is training our minds. So it's like what does that look like? Can you read?
Yes.
Okay.
Relying on a spiritual teacher.
Okay. So if the first stage of the Lam Rim, of the path, they sort of, I think what Venerable Rabina would refer to as, nursery school or something. So, that's where your focus is on trying to adopt behaviors and a body, speech, and mind that will benefit you in your rebirth. So what you have to do then, when you're starting, so the main thing you're supposed to focus on is is think about this precious human rebirth, that we've got great conditions. where, we have leisure time, and how we want to spend that, and focus on that. And also think about death and impermanence so that we don't waste any more time. We do run out of time. So we want to keep that in mind. We want to, if you're Buddhist, you want to keep going to the teachings, which is our refuge, so you have guidance, because so far, if we're not enlightened yet, we've been around for eons, we obviously need some instruction. So, and then about karma, because that's the cause and effect of how we think. So basically, the first activity is, to figure out what actions need to be abandoned and what actions need to be adopted. And then when you decide, okay, I don't want to suffer at all, I'd like to get out of this cycle of birth and death, sickness, illness, and birth and death, and birth and death, then you need to concentrate on liberation, which means you have to realize emptiness. You have to understand how things actually are. And the way you do that, first you have to think about the truth of suffering and the truth of the origin of suffering, because you need to develop renunciation so that your whole focus is making sure everything you do will help you stop being in this cycle. And you need a succession of good rebirths in order to, complete all this stuff. So ethics is the basis for being born human, so and human just means the kind of condition and physical support for your mind that's particularly useful. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that in every universe or something, they all look like us. It's not like that, but it's just that it's referring to how the capacity of that physical form to support the mind, as opposed to a mosquito, which isn't so much. So, and so then you concentrate on ethics to not lose any merit, for one thing, but in concentration and wisdom, because you need to develop perfect concentration in order to be able to penetrate the teachings on reality. So far, we haven't been talking about the benefit of others. So that's what comes in when on the third path, where, this is like grad school, where it's not enough to get yourself out of the cycle of suffering, but you want to help others. And so that means you need complete enlightenment. So you have to perfect all the good qualities. You have to perfect wisdom, become omniscient. Da, 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 da. So, and so here, the developing bodhicitta, that mind that wants to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, is the gateway to this part of the path. Right? All of this is about mind training. We might talk about actions of body and speech, but all of those are driven by the mind. And so it's really about noticing our thoughts and then, oh, okay, is this helpful or not helpful? And then recognizing habits we have that aren't helpful at all, and then trying to figure out ways to interrupt those habits and replace them with more constructive habits. So things like doing the mantras while you're doing something is a way of just, okay, I'm going to quit listening to my random thoughts all over the place that we just entertain ourselves with stories constantly. We make everything up. If we don't know the answer to something, we just find one that sort of fits, and just keep going. It's like, and instead of putting our mind to that kind of use, which is very good at, we probably all could have a billion novels in us, but it's not in any way helping us to actually transform our lives and our future. So, So doing anything we can to interrupt the current ways because we are training our mind. We're just training our mind in habits that aren't helping us so far.
It also seemed like it was, I don't know if I misread it, but it seemed like it was also saying that something that you could see is really mundane,
Right.
like doing dishes or sweeping.
Right.
Like could that itself
Yeah.
be blissful or like be more
Yep.
transmuted to something like that?
It doesn't I mean, there's lots of lofty language, but yes, I mean, the idea is if we focus on what the potential is, any task, doesn't matter what it is, we're stuck in samsara, so we're going to have dishes to wash, so any task, though, if we use it well, it can uplift us. It's like, all right, so if we want to end our suffering, how do we end our suffering? What's the simple answer to that?
And ignorant.
That's part of it. What's the other half? What's the other wing? Wisdom, compassion, and wisdom. Those are the two wings, right? Well, if you want to end your suffering, what's your first task? Yeah, what does that mean?
Understanding.
Yeah, I mean, and turning our direction outward. So instead of thinking about ourselves and what we want and what we'd like and and our own story, our own mess, instead of that being our focus, we turn it outward and we try to help others. That helping others is the path to happiness. We benefit because it will make us happy. It's just sort of strange. But, we have a tendency to think we have to really take care of this person first, and we're helpful and all those things. But if you're looking for the super mundane, then you're looking for perfecting that quality, where nothing you do is about this body, is about this mind. It's about how can I help you? And what's behind that idea? What's the Buddha talking about here? Why is it that it's so important for us to help each other? Because we're interdependent. There is no possible way for suffering to end if we don't take care of each other. It's of one piece. All the causes and conditions that come together to produce a moment of delight or whatever, they're countless that come together. And if we get all caught up in, well, let's make sure I get my piece, then we're missing all the opportunities we have to actually create the cause for having those positive karmic seeds ripen. It's like looking at things as a pure land. If like right now you just think that everybody in this room has Buddha potential, you might not know, I mean, but if you listen to the teachings, everybody has Buddha potential, even mosquitoes. They just can't do it in that body. So instead of looking at our boundaries and our restrictions and our things, our lack of, we want to look at what's actually possible, and knowing that everybody's bad actions are coming from ignorance and self-grasping. We don't have to fight them on that. We just have to have compassion. That it's not, we can see, at Thich Nhat Hanh, they would have, their expression was to, now I can't think of it, I'm really with it. When they bow, it's sort of like, I, I really can't think of it. You're bowing to it's like a lotus to you, but but the idea, the jewel in the lotus, that's Chenrezig, the compassion in the heart. The idea is that we want to respond to each other as if we're already there, even if they're appearing to be nowhere close. This is just about coming from a different angle. It's not about not noticing that someone's about to, hit you over the head with a stick. It's about understanding that the reason why you can't see them as Buddhas yet, is because their potential hasn't been fulfilled yet. And more specifically, our potential isn't fulfilled enough to see the Buddha. So everybody could be enlightened except, me. And y'all are all kind of waiting very patiently, so it's coming at things from a different angle. It's like His Holiness saying, he sees everybody as a friend. You don't have to agree on anything. You don't have to do this or that. It's just, it's coming from that perspective. And if you look at and this is the whole point of the teachings in this book about, life after life. And, so you try to picture everybody having been your mother, because we've had time. If consciousness has never ceased, always existed, then we have a new mother every time we take a new body. And by the time, eons pass, we've all taken care of each other in these very intimate ways, like being the mother, or being the father, or being the child, or being the brother, or being the sister, or being the best friend, or being the lover, all of those things. So we want to try to learn to value each other in that way. One of the things, because a lot of people seem to take the teachings like on equanimity, how to recognize that we see people as friends, enemies, strangers, only from our perspective. It's just because, they help us, or they don't help us, or you don't know them. It doesn't have any more meaning than that. It has nothing to do with the person. It has to do with what they do for us or don't do for us. But if some people take that to mean that we're just sort of neutral towards everybody, and that's not the case. We want to be the opposite of that. We want to be neutral towards how they treat us. But we want to see all of them as the most valuable being. The old things of, like the most important person is the person you're with. Let me see, I'm trying to find it.
I think last time you said indifference is the near enemy.
Yeah, it's a near enemy, equanimity. Yeah. So, yeah, it's not that we want to become indifferent or just, oh, well, it's karma, no big deal,
Okay.
They're getting what they deserve. Yeah, that's like the worst twisting of karma, and it's so easy to do, to just say, well, he'll get his, it's just,
Sometimes that pops up when you see somebody pulled over by a cop.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can totally picture that. So it's just that it's exactly wrong. It's exactly the kind of mind we're trying to abandon. So we have to look at what's that about? Why would that be a mind that we need to abandon? Doesn't that follow? If karma is cause and effect, and somebody's been driving like a maniac, and then, you know, whatever, irritating everybody they're driving past, causing accidents, whatever, then of course, you know, I should get a ticket.
Should get pleasure, passion for yourself.
And is it,
Well,
this thing's a little Pisces. And is it true? We have this, you know, now that karma is a word that we use in, you know, on commercials. I mean, you know, it's everywhere. And we have a phrase of instant karma. Well, karma's non-instant. So yes, it's a condition. If you're driving like a maniac, that is a condition for somebody to pull you over, you know, but driving like a maniac, they might not pull you over. You know, it's some karma has to ripen also. The conditions have to be there.
There has to be a cause.
Yeah, you have to create-
succeed, and we don't know where or when.
When, or, you
Who
know,
knows how many.
yeah,
So,
Yeah.
why do bad things happen to good people then?
because they did something bad in a previous life. You know, it's just cause and effect. You know, so pretty much the way it's described, if somebody comes up and yells at you, you know, and you think, who is this guy? Yeah. It just reflects that us having done that to someone else at some point. And it's just ripening in that moment, you know. So it's like, it's not about blame. It's a natural process of cause and effect. As we get our minds tamed so that we're not just reactive, we're not just following habits of self-centeredness, so we won't be creating the conditions to cause suffering to ripen. Oh.
If you don't have internal love for yourself, how is it possible to sort of project that into the world? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you definitely have to have
I
self-love.
mean, if you don't work on that,
Yeah.
sort of on yourself,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just trying to understand that.
that's why you start with yourself first.
How long does that take? As long as it takes.
It's really, yeah, it really,
Each person to their own.
it's interesting how we're a mixed bag of stuff, of qualities and skills, you know, and it's like, you know, you might meet conditions like, but I met the Dharma. You know, the first teaching I had was a 4-day teaching on compassion, and I was just hooked. You know, I was not seeking anything except another place to meditate. I had no spiritual anything. I mean, it was just not my thing, you know. So it's like, and you know, so who knows how that, you know, I mean, Buddhists could know maybe, but I can't know that because can't remember all these different things. But like we've got, like, those of us who are born in a culture, you know, in a society that tends to be self-loathing, you know, that they tend to have a trouble with liking themselves or feeling worthy or a blah blah blah. That's our collective karma of, you know, of a habit that's finally resulted in even a cultural experience, you know. So it's like, you know, so it's get hard. And then people who are born, who don't have that habit, and that's not what's ripening in this life, they're born in a communal society where the Tibetans absolutely don't get our idea that we're not worth anything. It's not part of their culture at all. You know, they think everybody has Buddha nature, and that's a pretty good thing. So, you know, it's just, it's interesting. So yeah, it's difficult. But that's why you start with yourself. And then having like good self-care, you know, is not, I want to say, antithetical to cherishing others. Or,
Having self-compassion doesn't mean you're self-cherishing. That's,
well, you could say it's self-cherishing, but it's not negative. Self-cherishing is not a disturbing emotion.
Is that pride different from pride?
Go ahead.
I presume we have to have self-compassion because as you practice Buddhism, it's easy to think, well, I'm not good enough. So you have self-compassion, I believe.
You need self-compassion because you're a sentient being that's suffering. No more, no big story. That's simple. And the way out of suffering is to care. You know, I mean, one of the ways we suffer is we add a layer of mental suffering on top of things we're experiencing by things like habits like trashing ourselves. You know, so we want to remove those kind of stories from our habits. It's in it, and we do it to other people. You know, we walk into a room and we start judging people by what they're wearing or what they, you know, whatever. I mean, it's just like amazing. That's a bad habit for happiness. You know, first of all, you miss what you might enjoy if you're sitting there nitpicking it about people. You know, you're encouraging yourself to find negative things. You're perhaps expressing your own anxiety in a way that attacks others, you know, even if it's just in your head. You know? So it's all these things, you know, indicate how much taming of our mind we need. We need to recognize those kinds of habits create suffering all by themselves. They don't need any help. You know, so if we want to reduce our suffering, we can start there. So that when those thoughts arise, we can go, well, that's not true. And you say it 3 billion times, but it's just, you know, it's literally, you just have to keep interrupting yourself going, well, that's not true. And you do it when you're judging yourself or when you're judging others. It doesn't mean we don't have to judge actions and we don't have a plan and all those kind of things, but it means that we can get out of this, I know what they're thinking game. We don't even know what we're thinking. So we need, you know, this is really important in, if you want to develop daily habits that benefit you, you need these little things. Like, oh, I think I'll start saying mantras when, you know, when I'm cleaning house, because I hate cleaning house and I'm grumbling. You're better than me because I just don't clean my house. So, you know, it's just this, but it's about like, okay, I'm worth something. My happiness counts. So I might as well enjoy this process. You know, it's no different than, you know, I remember seeing one time a thing about, okay, you need to make a list. Things that you have to do, things that you know, do, but don't have to do, you know, and then things you don't do, but wish you were doing.
Never gonna do.
Yeah, never gonna do. Yeah, dream on list, you know. But then you want to, you know, any of those that you don't have to do and don't like to do, stop doing. The things you have to do, you might as well like doing it. And that's a mind game. That's all it is a mind game. It's like when you go to work, you know, and somebody else is deciding what you have to do, and you can eat grouse all you want about it. But the truth is, it's an exchange. You know, you get paid to do what they tell you to do. And you can either fight that with every part of your body, you know, and mind, or you can just say, okay, that's what my job is today. You know, that doesn't mean you accept abuse. It just means you accept the fact that I need to work for a living and this is what's being asked of me. And I don't have to make myself miserable about it. You know, even if I disagree with what they've decided, or even have done this 17 times and I have to do it again, you know, it's irrelevant. We want to see that. We want to see that what we're not accepting is what's happening. And we're making a big story about it and adding a layer of mental suffering on top of what we have to do. You know? So what's the story about that? It's like a guy gets shot by an arrow or something.
And he needs to know, you know, who shot it, what the arrow was made of, what tribe he came from, where the feather.
Well, it gives it long enough for the second arrow to get shot at him. You know, you don't want to be your own second arrow. You know, it's like bad enough that you're injured. You don't have to then drive yourself crazy with things like, oh, I should have gotten out of the way. I should have known he was trouble. You know, whatever it is, whatever little story you're creating, you know, that's not based on anything real. So Um,
Like making a bad situation worse.
Yep, like making a bad situation worse. And our heads do that all the time. The way we're thinking does it all the time. Now, let's look at it from a different angle. Like, we can kind of easily see how when we're just in a mindset of trashing everybody or being, disgusted with what's going on and how that can just add a layer of, oh, well, isn't this grand? But also, you want to look at if you have a mind that daydreams or has lots of expectations about something coming up and how you're setting yourself up, for that grousing later. It's one thing to plan, it's one thing to hope for, whatever, but we really have to watch when we're attached to an outcome. So that's another type of mind training of realizing, oh, let it go. You don't know what's going to happen. Wait and find out, kind of thing. Because then we often miss what we might actually enjoy because it's not fitting our expectation.
So besides degree, is there a specific difference between attachment and grasping?
Yeah, it's the degree, but it is just the degree. It's like attachment is that liking of it, craving for it, blah, blah, blah. Grasping is when you got to have it. It's gone that next emphasis. And that's what leads us into being born again, the craving and grasping. Because it's self-grasping. It might not be, it might not be grasping at your own self, but it might be grasping at the selves of your family that you're leaving behind or something, So it's, and that's the fundamental confusion we have, thinking that things exist in that kind of way. Whereas, the Buddha said, no, you're never going to lose anybody because nobody goes away. It's just we take different bodies, we take this and that, but all our consciousnesses keep going. So it's not to worry. What you want to worry about is the kind of life, what you're creating the cause for, so that you have good rebirths, so that you can do good things for yourself and others, and hopefully eventually get liberated and enlightened. So, but we think it's just natural to be afraid of death and natural to be self-grasping, when it's actually a mistake of point of view. We've the fact that we see everything dualistically, we see things, we grasp at this self, which means everybody else is an other. Well, that's a problem already, the self and other routine, you and me routine, us and them routine. That perspective of things isn't accurate. It really is interdependent. So like say you disagree with a group of people about something, but they're here, you got to deal with it. And they're part of the committee that makes the decision or something. It's like you have to come to a way to be able to come up with a solution that's, doable. Not do things like, let's just kill them all because, they're in my way. So it's just, which is what we've done so far historically on this planet, just not a big surprise. But it's hard. It's effortful because we're so conditioned to thinking that if I just get what I want, that will be, I can get everything just right. And then you get a little older and you go, well, maybe not everything. And then you realize, okay, well, the body's probably not going to cooperate, blah, blah, blah. But we're still grasping at this idea. There's something to be had somewhere that's going to fix it. When what will fix it is if we work on our minds and quit grasping at straws. And that interdependence it's like what we've talked about before, that if you want to develop your good qualities, who do you need? Difficult, needy people. Nobody needs anything. You can't develop generosity, can't develop patience. Everybody's, treats you like, king of the universe. It's, you don't have to develop any good qualities. We need each other. And so if we're that person, we're the difficult person for somebody else, we want to think about that. I am a condition for this person to lose it. I'm very familiar with that one. But this is the way that we can try to, I don't want to be that person. I want to come from the other angle, to be the person that might be helpful, but it also means, you want to be a condition for people's generosity, or, all those kind of, it's like, it's not like we need things from each other. We need help. We need, Sharon had to make my bed today, so it's like, we need help because we're not self-sufficient, independent, and permanent, which is how we think things are. Not intellectually, but we just react to everything as if it's like that. How many people, as we age, so many of us fight a real mental battle with the fact we can't do everything we used to be able to do. As if that like big surprise, So we had to work on that.
Yeah, no, that shitty garba, I could not help with that.
I can't, I'll have to turn completely around to see it.
The
Yeah, I
Mormon
know.
statue,
Yeah.
yeah. Anthony and
Hernan,
Hernan, yeah, I couldn't
Up
even,
on his feet.
yeah.
it's heavy.
It's 400 pounds.
A marble, yeah. Whereas my teacher, when we had to fill a Siddhi Garba statue, huge, it was a big statue, and you had to hold it upside down without breaking it and fill it with mantras and incense and all this kind of stuff. My teacher, who is 10 years older than me, no, more than that, 15, he's the same age as His Holiness, is filling it. And, and the young monks that are helping him look like they're suffering greatly. It was hard work, but it just shows you, cushy background. So it's just interesting. Oh, it's funny. But yeah, we have to face what we can and cannot do. And we can make ourselves miserable because of it, or we can just accept it. This is what it is. Because your worth isn't dependent on that. That's the mistake we make. We think that I don't have value if I can't do this, or I'm in danger if I can't do this. We have all varieties of that. Yeah, right.
We attach our self-worth, so we also attach our happiness. If I can't do these things, then I can't be happy.
And I can't have these things, I can't be happy.
Right.
We have a long list of those, and we know
Well,
intellectually, we know it's not true, but we persist and striving for it. It's like if you have a day, a fun practice, maybe that's a relative term, an interesting practice to do is to pick a day and just say, okay, today I'm not going to do anything based on my desire. It's sort of like your habit of ordering whatever anybody else orders for lunch or something. So your opinion on it doesn't matter. And it's that kind of habit. Doesn't matter what I want. I'm just going to, I'll have this. Because we have such good conditions, we can get exactly what we want in almost every moment of the day. And that just breeds nothing but more craving, more impatience. So it's helpful to just say, oh, I'd like this, and say, well, I'm not having it today. It's just interesting to see how often the craving mind comes up. and how often the thought of it comes up. I got to New Orleans the last visit, and there wasn't any milk, and I drink tea, milk. And Joan apologized. She goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to get it at the store. Like, no big deal." But I did have to face the fact that that meant for a couple of days, because we don't have a car, a couple of days, I'm not going to have milk with my tea. Oh, this is a great practice, right? So it's silly little things, but that is like a little, uh, bringing the binoculars onto your habits and being able to say, oh, look at me, really, you have to have milk? It's stupid. It's, and it doesn't make me happy or unhappy if I choose not to respond that way. So it's crazy. But we have lots of habits, and so it's a process of noticing and then discerning, is this a not great habit? What benefit do I get from this habit? What disadvantage of having this habit? And really being able to, um, it's like you think about the people who have had their homes destroyed in wildfires or floods or earthquakes, that one second they have, their little home, and the next second they have none of it. And if your mind is just, can't get your mind around that, it's going to be much harder to cope with it. So the more that you can, and I mean, in most of these situations, the good news is you can rely on that, well, nobody was killed, so we'll start there. That's a good thing, because they're big disasters, So it's just, but we want to be able to just know that, okay, it's all right. I will survive this,
Happened yesterday
with what, which one?
in DC.
I know everybody in a helicopter.
I know that was terrible, wasn't it?
Uh,
Total, 100%.
30 seconds from the ground.
Yeah. And that's how we live every day. And that's why getting all caught up in fear and things isn't particularly helpful, because we're that vulnerable. And we don't like being that vulnerable. But in this big view of things, according to the Buddha, it doesn't matter. What you want is a good mind at the time of death. You don't want a angry, screaming mind at the time of death, so that you have a good rebirth. And you get to do it all again.
Yeah.
And again, again. But we all have skills. We're all born with certain things that we're much better at than other things. So we're just building on that. And we develop new habits in this life. We'll build on that, and if we make it a strong enough habit, it will manifest in some way in the future. But that's also part of the purpose of things like relying on mantras, doing same refuge and stuff, is that we want, since we need a successive string of good rebirths, we want us to be attracted to teachings, so that we will seek it out in a rebirth, so we can continue our process towards finding a way out of suffering. So that's why there are all these things about don't disparage images of the Buddhas or whatever, because you wanted always to seem appealing to you. That's the theory behind it. So it's weird, because it's not, it's like me when I first walked into a Tibetan Buddhist store. It's like, okay, this is weird. I had no attraction to the cultural aspects of Tibetan Buddhism. None, zero, zippo. Didn't matter though.
life, you got very far along with your training of your mind.
Or at least I got far along with seeking this path. Not sure how far along I got with training my mind. But clearly I had a connection with compassion, the teachings on compassion. Because that just was like, I'm home. So, yeah. But it's like I told you, I had one monk saw a picture of Venerable Gyatso walking down a path or something in Australia, it just in the newspaper article. And this guy just said, I want to be like that. And he ordained, found a Buddhist center. I mean, it's just from seeing somebody in robes. Weird. But it's the, oh, who knows? The main thing is that we're trying to train our minds in a positive direction. And by that, I mean that where we're really taking to heart things that actually will benefit us in the long term and benefit others in the long term. And that requires being able to, like getting in the habit of just noticing what you're thinking, what conversation you're having in your head, and then going, guess what? That's not a very good conversation. Let's, move on from that. We kind of watch the stories we tell ourselves. So, I mean, it's, do you have any questions for the book? You usually have good ones.
Nothing I can think of right off. Well, there is one thing, but I don't know if it's exactly in line. But as far as being conscious of your consciousness, right? So that's knowing your mind, but no, I don't mean it that way.
Okay.
I mean is rebirth,
Okay.
like the consciousness that you're reborn with. That'll
You already have it, yeah.
will help you tend towards looking towards something. Whatever you had in your previous life.
No, it doesn't. It's not, what do you call it?
Linear,
Huh?
not linear.
Well, it's not linear, that's for sure. Or we'd all be there by now. But it doesn't accumulate in a convenient fashion. So I gotta quit doing that. So it's the habits that are strongest, if we meet the right conditions, are probably going to show up again as when they're the strongest. But to show you how it might not, okay, say you do all this good work and, but at the at the last moment of life or whatever, someone comes up and stabs you and you're freaking out, and mad and angry. And that's a cause to not have such a great rebirth, because you want to kill that person that just stabbed you. So you wake up and you're in a war zone instead.
Listen, if I was so good all these years and I was.
We're talking eons here, Sharon.
Yeah, there you go.
It's one little life, I know it seems terrible, but it's absolutely fair. If the law of cause and effect is true, it's not, it's all fair.
It applies to animals too.
Yeah. Absolutely fair.
Yeah, but let's say I led a good life.
Uh-huh.
Say I prayed, I did mantras, I helped other people, and then at the last minute.
Mhm. Why would you have that at the last minute? Where would that come from?
That's the other person.
Oh, it's their fault. Yeah, you've already gone to hell right there.
See,
If that person kills me, you're saying.
Why would they kill you?
Because I know what you're saying.
Then tell me what I'm saying.
It was cause and effect. Somehow we had the karmic seed.
No, get much more specific here, Sharon.
I did a bad thing.
You tried to kill him in a previous life. And it's ripening now for you. You're not some innocent victim. You created the cause to be stabbed.
But what about all the Vajay Sattva?
Yeah, it's they're only as
purification
powerful as your mind. So it's a start, but let's face it, if you have to purify the same action every day, you haven't made much progress with purifying because it's a mind thing. It's not about actual purifying. It's the fact that you've trained your mind to stop, you know. So, and it's all worthwhile. But the point is to try to think that's not fair is missing the whole teaching on cause and effect. The odds are much better, if you'd like to put it that way, that if you've been practicing well and been really taming your mind and not reacting things and not being reactive to things, that at the time that somebody comes out with a knife with you, you might think something compassionate. And that would be a condition for a good rebirth. You might think, oh man, I must have really hurt this person. You wouldn't, you know, your first thought wouldn't be, this isn't fair.
Oh, Sharon, when are you gonna change?
Yeah, but
Yeah, we said this is the practice.
the good news is at that moment, a bad karmic seed has been exhausted.
Yeah, but that's the only good news. How many do you think you got?
Well, you have to latch on to something.
Yeah, done with that.
I'd rather latch on to that than be angry.
Well, yeah, you definitely don't want to be angry because that just continues the
because then
cycle.
You get thrown to a bad reverse.
Mhm.
Look at all the people in the plane. They must have been screaming to their death.
Yeah, they might have been, but not everybody probably. But it would surprise me if they were. It's a terrible death.
Doesn't it work the other way too?
Which way?
In other words, let's say, you know, somebody's been a criminal all their life and they spend the last 5 years in prison and at their death, they, you know, they've been working on it. So
They've been working on their minds, and so they have a peaceful mind, a compassionate mind. They're not sitting there going, it's not fair. They're not, you know, they're not sitting there going, it's his fault. Da, da, da. Yes, they can have a good rebirth because we're all a mixture of things. If you're born human, you had to practice ethics in the past. So everybody on this planet who's a human being created the cause to be a human being. That's no small task. And you think of the number of mosquitoes and minnows and no-see-ums and all that stuff, you know? So this is another reason why our judging of others is so ludicrous. As if we know their whole history, as if we know what's in their mind, you know? We can judge their actions and say, well, that's not a good thing to do, or we're going to have to put you away because you got to stop doing that. You know, we're going to protect ourselves from your negative actions. But, you know, but judging that person as if we, you know, that they're evil or bad or blah, 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 is a mistake. It's not understanding how things are.
Well, maybe I just can't really fully accept karma as being totally the truth.
You're a baby. I mean, let's face it. It took years for me to feel comfortable with the idea of karma. And I was totally immersed in all this stuff. You know, it takes time. And you may eventually reject it. That's up to you, you know. But the point is, wanting, I mean, we all have a certain desire to just want to know it right now. Why? Why do we have that desire?
to stop suffering.
Well, we're grasping, aren't we? Yeah, I don't want to do the work. I just want to be there. I'm really good at that attitude. Yeah, exactly. Drat. It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Buddha married.
Was he married? I can't remember now. He had a child. Yeah, he was married. I don't know if he was married, but he had a relationship. He had a child.
They did have-
Yeah. And he left his wife. He was a prince, yes. And his father was grooming him to be the king. And so his father, this is the legend, that his father was told at his birth by a spiritual person that there are two paths for this young man, this baby. He'll either become a great spiritual leader or he'll become a great king. Well, the father, being the king, wanted him to be a great king. So he shielded him from anything except the pleasures of being a prince or, in a kingdom. And he wasn't really actually allowed off the palace grounds. And so once he was a young man, being as young men do, he wanted to find someone else out there. And so he crawled, I don't know what he did. He was friends with the chariot, the person who took the little chariot out, And then he saw someone who was sick, and he'd never seen anybody sick before, and then somebody who died. So he saw suffering for the first time. And he thought, this isn't worth it. So anyway, he ended up on a spiritual path. But, of course, our view of it in our tradition is just that he was already enlightened. He was demonstrating the deeds of how to, blah, blah, blah. And so, and his son became a monk, I think, eventually.
Monk.
Yeah. I can't think of his wife, Yasudhara. Is that his wife's name? I can't remember.
Just wondered if he was.
Yeah, he was married. Oh, it was one of my favorite things to learn in the beginning was, he left his wife and his child and went off to do his own thing. He didn't leave, and he did. That's what he did. Of course, she was in a kingdom and was perfectly safe and wealthy and all that stuff, huh?
A princess.
Well, yeah. So it wasn't like he left her destitute and in danger. But, I thought that was pretty terrible. But that's because I have an idea about those things. I have a very definite idea about it. So, and going off and becoming enlightened just doesn't seem to be on your to-do list if you're married. Anyway, but married people can become enlightened. It's not a barrier. Yes, which is why they're useful.
It would teach you, is that what you mean?
I'm sorry, to what?
Teach you, is that what it is? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just an opportunity to develop skills, and we're interdependent. So learning how to communicate and learning how to get along and all those things are skills we need. So, relationships can be helpful, but that's also why the Buddha said, leave this kind of life, a householder life, because it's too difficult in the beginning. So it's just because you're making a commitment to one person when you're trying to develop a mind that's trying to serve all people. So it's challenging. But anyway, did you have another question? Okay. So in the text, it's talking a lot about how to develop bodhicitta. About how, the 7-point cause, 6 causes and 1 effect, where you try to imagine that all beings have been your mother. You recall the kindnesses of a mother, and you wish to repay that kindness. These are all steps to try to get us to open our hearts to the possibility of having affection for all sentient beings. Not just, we don't have to like them. As anybody who has, parents of very difficult children or something, they may not like them, but they have affection for them. They want them to be well. They want to help them. They want all those things. It's not about liking. It's about, this person counts, and I want, to do whatever I can to help them, kind of thing. And so that's the attitude we want to develop towards everybody, which is a real big reach. I mean, it's not like we start there. Although some people you meet seem to be fairly close to that, they seem to have practiced that a lot because they have no trouble always thinking about others. I remember I was working for a women's center. I was volunteering for a women's center in North Carolina for a while. And the woman that was running it, she was a social worker and stuff. But like like every day when she'd leave work, she'd go to all the hotels in town and get all the leftover food and bring it to the food, food soup kitchens and stuff, you know. And she had to drive all the way to another town to go home, but she didn't think anything of it. That was just her habits, she just did that. And she was always doing that. And she was just really well practiced and, just, okay, I have the time. I can do it. I will do it. And just did it because her mind was on the focus on the people who needed it, not on her free time, So it's just, so we see people like that all the time. It's not magic. It's effort, and if you practice it enough in one life, it may just be your habit in the next life. You don't even think about it. There's no struggle for you at all. It's just what comes up. We have to pace ourselves so we can get there. Because if we don't know our capacity, we'll burn out. If we also don't know our capacity, we won't stretch ourselves a little bit so that we get a little wider, So it's a process. And this is always a process of observation. We have to look at what we're doing, look at our mind, see what we're thinking and keep working on it. Recognize when, I would just really wanted to go home and eat ice cream instead. I wasn't really too tired or I wasn't really this or that. I just really felt like doing something else. We just need to be honest with where we are, so we can choose. Oh, next time I have this opportunity, I think I'll take it. It's that kind of thing. But it says, like that we slip into this blaming kind of mind so easily, when the guy's coming to stab you, it's his fault. And that's like the mind of hatred, like the intense anger, is a mind that wants to harm the sources of their suffering. It's like they've gone, it's like they've gone beyond just being angry. Now they want to harm the sources of suffering. And the sources of suffering are, guess what? Somebody else. It's either a computer or other people, or it's like, we think that way. We always think that it's someone else's responsibility for how I feel in this moment. And that's giving an awful lot of power to everybody else. And it's not accurate. So it's really fun to just kind of go, okay, I'm being reactive here. I'm being reactive here. I can choose not to do that. With effort and practice and practice. Oh, anyway. So when you were talking about, like, you can think about how you're exhausting a negative seed, and that's correct, and that's one good thing to hold on to in those moments. But one of the things also we need, like not purifying, realizing emptiness, realizing reality as it is, stops all our karmic seeds from ripening, because the foundation for all of our negative actions and our negative states of mind is our misunderstanding of how things exist. So when we actually penetrate that and no longer think that way, we're not creating any of those causes anymore. The ultimate purifier, though, is this mind of bodhicitta. So every time you do something with a bodhicitta motivation, or once you become actually a bodhisattva, so it's a 24/7 kind of thing, you're purifying only your past actions, just with everything that you do. So, you know, so you're creating good conditions for you to have more good conditions, so that you can help others. I mean, you might look like you're in bad conditions, like, you know, you may choose to be born in a war zone, you know, because once you get to a certain level, you can do that. But so it looks like, you know, you're in a hell realm, but you know, but actually you're doing it to benefit others. Yeah, you're not suffering. Yeah, because it is mine.
Holiness is in that position.
Yeah, I would think so. But I mean, I don't know because I don't have the merit to know.
I mean, just having this country invaded and taken away,
Mhm.
as people
Yep.
tortured and murdered, and
Mhm.
He's not angry.
Yeah.
Very far along.
Yeah, well, it's cool. I mean, it's cool to
That's
see these
great.
people, and we have examples of it all over the place, you know, where people are able what?
Positive reinforcement to see this holiness, to see someone like that.
Well, as long as we don't think it's magic, oh, he's just a special person. Yes, he is a special person,
But he worked.
but it's a result, it's an effect. It's not just how he came, you know. So Buddhas all started like we are, you know. They had to practice a path. It had to be this path. I mean, they have to practice, you know, good actions, give up bad actions, tame their mind, see reality as it actually is. Understand the interdependence, you know, all that kind of stuff. We done? We already there? Yes. Don't we wish? What's you know what you have to do is if you give it enough, it's so easy for me to say. If you give it enough of a shot, you know, try these different things. Try doing things with your mind that might uplift your attitude and stop negative conversations in the mind. If you try to observe and go, oh, look where my mind's going. I don't want to go that direction. I think I'll interrupt that. Da 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 da. You do that and you do it again and again, and you'll fail a lot, but you'll eventually find it's easier and you don't struggle so much with it. You know, it just becomes what you do. And it's not, you kind of let go of things easier, you know, and then you'll get your humility when some condition arises, like, accept this one, you know, because well, that's the mistake we make. We think we throw out everything, like we haven't done anything differently, that we're still the same old, you know, just because we've met a condition that's really hard for us. And so we don't want to go there. We just want to go, oh, okay, this is good to know. I haven't worked so hard on this one, you know, because we meet these challenges that surprise us, you know. So it's, I have to just hang in there. And that's where, like you said, you know, in the beginning, is, you know, that you have to care about yourself enough, value yourself enough, understand that you matter because you're part of this interdependent family of beings. I'm sorry.
Well, love, I mean, you know, the thing, love your neighbor, like,
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
if you don't love yourself, how are you gonna love your neighbor?
Right.
I mean,
If you don't know how to treat yourself well, you're not going to do it. Yeah, I mean, it's the same idea. It's exactly the same. And it's you know, so it's this understanding that when we trash ourselves, we're practicing a mind we don't want to practice. You know, makes it all that much easier to trash somebody else. If we do the guilt trip or the self-loathing thing, we're giving ourselves permission not to change. We're telling ourselves, I can't change. You know, we all know intellectually that that's not true. So we have to argue with ourselves when that happens. You know, and say, well, that's not true. It's just hard. And we might even come to those things where we say, and I just don't want to. You know, it's you know, those kind of things. You know, we all make choices. I'm not working on that in this life. You know, until we do. Anyway. Yeah, no. Okay. What am I doing now? There we go.
So you want me to share something?
I'm doing it. I just had to remember what I was doing. Don't wear a neck brace and wear progressive lenses. You can't tilt your head the right way. Fortunately, I know most of these things almost by heart. Anyway, so take a moment just rejoice in your efforts to think about things, consider things from a different angle. Because working on our mind is the best activity we can be doing until we benefit others. You know, it's a really important task. And all we have to do is watch people with absolutely no control over their minds to see how beneficial it is to have some control. And so that creates a cause for positive results in the future. And so we want to share those positive results with others. So, due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may we quickly attain the state of Guru Buddhas and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. Jewel Bodhicitta that is not arisen, arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way that I may follow their perfect example. Now, now I'm skipping around. Don't get nauseous. Wait until I stop. Where is it? And we're going to do this. We'll do this one. Oh, not that. We're going to do this one. Because of all the merits of the 3 times created by me and all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and other sentient beings, may there be no wars, famines, disease, quarreling, fighting, or unhappy minds. May there be great prosperity, and may everything needed be easily obtained. May all the human beings in the world be guided by spiritual leaders teaching only Dharma, and may everyone enjoy the happiness of Dharma. May everyone have perfect conditions and have only compassion and love for each other in their mind streams, and may they only benefit and never harm each other. And then the long life prayer for His Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezi, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And swift return from Lamas of Rinpoche. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children, the victorious ones, Shrapakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losam father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that's never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Yay. All right.
The word Mooney, that's